Something that I think is always overlooked by newer game masters and is usually overlooked by experienced game masters is what players want. And when I say that, I mean specifically the players at the table that they are running a game for. A lot of game masters have this idea that they should run exactly the game that they want to run, and their players should just be grateful that they have someone to run the game for them. Not only is this just hilariously untrue, but if you run your game like this, then the good news, or bad news if you're averse to change, in which case why you're watching this video, the good news is that there's a lot you can improve on, and that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of what I'm going to say mostly applies to running for people that you know. When I say this, I don't really mean people that you are friends with, I more mean people that you've gamed with for a long time or have run games for before. But I will also be including advice for designing a game for people that you don't know well or even at all. That's at the end of the video though. So what exactly am I going on about? Well, every player enjoys different things and derives their enjoyment of games from doing different kinds of things. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the 8 archetypes of players in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think that those are good to think about in terms of what players like, and I'll probably mention some of them or some things that are comparable to them in this video, but I'm more interested in what your players do in the game. These may seem similar, and in a lot of instances that they are, but the distinction is important because in reality they're not the same thing all of the time. I'm kind of rambling at this point, so I'm just going to start using some examples from the games that I run. I've run for my Monday group for over a year and a half. We're in our second campaign that I've run for us. So I know these people very well, and in their first campaign I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know what they liked to do in Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to learn from my mistakes right now. And then we're going to see how I improved upon them in the second campaign. So like many DMs, I just ran the game that I felt like running, and the game that I felt like running was a big damn quest to save the world. With a complex network of bad guys and a corrupt ruling power, and a cool civil war on the brink of happening that I wanted the players to get involved with. It was only after I started running for these people that I realized that none of them cared about social political intrigue, save for one player, literally at all. They totally ignored all of those things in favor on going on adventures to cool places, and as a result of this, their big damn quest to save the world didn't really go that well. If I were to describe Monday Campaign 1 in a single sentence, it'd be, the world can wait. Let's see what's through this door. A bad dungeon master, me at the time, would blame their players for this. You see the memes on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. DM crafts big, grand, important story and the players would rather talk to a cat or whatever because they're all druids. But in reality, it's more along the lines of inconsiderate game designer wastes time selling Dark Souls to a Mario player. When I designed Monday Campaign 2, the game we're currently heading into our 4th week of, I made this whole game with them in mind. Their primary interests are exploring, battling, and treasure, with lore and role-playing as secondary interests, and absolutely no interest, importantly, in politics whatsoever. So I made my new game a Metroidvania-style game in a colossal mega-dungeon filled with treasures, bosses, interesting things to find, and memorable characters. They like jumping between lots and lots of different things quickly, so I made sure that none of these areas were too big, and that they were all special and distinct from each other so that they could go on lots of different types of adventures with a variety of encounters. None of these areas are meant to last more than 2 or 3 weeks, and most of the adventures, while loosely connected by a sort of history or lore that permeates the entire setting, are largely unrelated. A player could miss a few sessions, come back, and really not feel like they missed anything at all, and that's not bad, I guess. My players now seem like they're a lot more engaged with this game than they were in the last one, and they seem like they're having a lot of fun. I've started saving my political intrigue and heavy role-playing games for Tuesday because that's literally all they want to do. If my first precept of game design is that 50 feet of rope thing from my last video, then my second is definitely, don't sell Dark Souls to a Mario player. So that covers our players, but what about their characters? Every character should feel like they have their own arc, progression, story, and thing happening that is special and unique to only them. This might seem like a lot if you aren't already doing it, and in larger parties it sort of is, but that's okay. We're going to help you nail it. So right off the bat, it's okay to have things happen that only happen to, involve, or affect a few of the players in your party, and in fact, this should happen. Give every player their own moments in the spotlight. They can be small, but make sure they happen. The example for single character moments that I'm going along with is my good friend Sam's half-elf druid Alethra. Sam is a role player in my Tuesday game. All he cares about is cool, interesting things happening that involve his character. For his arc, I thought I'd challenge his character's morality, he is a good character, in a couple of different ways. So first off, about 5 sessions in, a spirit entered his body and began to speak to him in his mind about basically everything he did as a sort of backseat commentary. So right off the bat, he has these interesting role-playing moments that only he can ever be a part of, and he absolutely loved it. A big part of this is that if your table isn't respectful of this happening, it can get messy. So you need to make sure that when you're doing something that only involves one or a few of your players, that all of the non-participants are still engaged in what's happening and that they're respectful of everyone else at the table. I do this by making sure all my players get equal time, and by making sure that they understand that they are getting equal time in the spotlight. So back to Alethra, I had him meet many different NPCs who all had very stark and interesting moral views that they'd tried to impose on him, and some of them stuck, including some of the less good ones. And through all of this, the spirit would just make little comments. Oh, a bit selfish now, are we? My, how ruthless you've become. It was great, it was dramatic, and it never interfered with what was going on. Rather, it built off of what was going on. That's what we're going for here. These were all NPCs that were relevant to what was going on in the main story that the whole group cared about, and the interactions with the spirit were short and didn't take the players off course. That last part is important. Don't take the players too off course too often for individual character arcs. Save that stuff for the end of the arc during the late game when they're higher level and can travel around faster and easier and get things done more effectively. Keep them on course for most of the game, but then maybe have one big quest or adventure that resolves their arc that the whole party kind of goes on with them. Have one such adventure for each player in the mid to late game to give every player one big adventure that's especially for them, but involves everyone. This makes what happened to that character important to everyone, and gives everyone their own part in it. When creating single character arcs, it's important to make sure that they aren't huge distractions, so you don't have 4 sessions where only one player gets to do anything. I'm going to use the example of a current Monday player, Emily, and her fighter, Princess Valentine. In keeping with the theme of satisfying your players, if you have a player who is a princess or a prince or a lord or a sir or a captain or an arcane master or anything like that, you should use their title when referring to them and have NPCs address them accordingly. It goes a long way in creating a rich role-playing experience that assures them that their position and rank matter, because they should. Princess Valentine is one of 3 princess heirs to the human kingdom of Halfwyn. Halfwynian coronary tradition is that each heir is to embark on a quest where they each discover a magic item. They are to return with their chosen item to battle each other for a chance at ruling the kingdom. Princess Valentine is on her quest now, seeking a sword crafted by the legendary sword master of the Eternal Kingdom, Banter. I have decided that Banter is actually still alive in the ruined civilization, but he's hung up that hat and adopted the quiet life of a shopkeeper. The progression of Valentine's arc shall be thus, hopefully. She will meet Banter, unaware of who he actually is, and tell him who she seeks, which she has already. He will tell her of the famed Bladesinger lords who could perhaps help her. Known to Banter, but unknown to Her Majesty, the Bladesinger lords are adamantly sexist and opposed to the instruction of outsiders. Banter has taken a new student. She just doesn't know it yet. Her first lesson is a simple one. Confront the Bladesingers. When her challenge to them was declined, because she's a woman, she asserted herself and persuaded them to fight her with some help from her paladin friend. She believed in herself, unafraid of these so-called sword masters, and defeated them. Lesson 1 complete. While exploring the Eternal Kingdom, Princess Valentine will encounter Banter's 3 failed students. Each will present a new challenge for her, and it is Banter's hope that she will succeed where they have failed and learn the lessons that they could not. When all this is done, a final test. Princess Valentine will face the legendary swordsman Banter in honorable combat. Upon her victory, hopefully, Banter will teach her his greatest lesson. The most powerful sword a true master can wield is their own. Cute, I know. And with that, he will enchant and reforge her weapon into his greatest work yet, giving her the magical, powerful sword that she set out for all along. Notice that I didn't give you the locations of his 3 students. That's important. I can put them anywhere. They may live in seclusion or among others. Basically, whenever a session is getting dull or progressing slowly, I can insert one piece of a character-specific art into any area. in this case a student of banter, and suddenly there's a new important thing happening to someone that hasn't diverted them from their original course. I have such things planned for all of my players. Another thing you can do when you have moments for specific players is that you can create interesting pairs or subgroups of players for single encounters. When the party was challenged to honorable combat last Monday by the 3 Blade Singer Lords of Pilgrim's Way, an encounter began where they had to choose 3 swordsmen out of their 7 players to go and battle them. This was a part of Princess Valentine's arc, but I saw an opportunity to involve other specific players. Fred, the paladin, whose character gets on very well with Her Majesty, and James, the party's ranger and only other sword fighter. Zach, the person who plays James, is a newer player and he's very shy, quiet, and he struggles to insert himself into things, and this is something that is characteristic of newer players. So as his introduction to the spotlight, I decided to give him some friends so he didn't feel like he was on the spot. After the game, Zach told me that it was his favorite moment so far in Dungeons & Dragons, because he felt like his character got to do something special and cool. That's what we're going for. You can also do this to create interesting pairs that you don't normally see in situations that players don't normally find themselves in. Maybe your rogue and your sorcerer get captured and separated. This is just another stealthy infiltration encounter for the rogue, but for the sorcerer, this is new. The rogue could make a smooth, stealthy escape quite easily on their own, but the sorcerer has no such skills and can't keep up with them. They're going to have to work together if they both want to get out alive. This also gives these 2 characters specifically their own time to roleplay together and further develop their relationship away from the rest of the party. This video is starting to look pretty long, so I want to get to what you should do if you don't know what your players want. The answer is very simple, but you might not like it. You ask them. Hold a session 0 for your players, which you should do anyway, before the game even starts, and find out what they want to do. When you get a hard I don't know from all of the new people and indecisive people in the room, ask what kinds of games they play. If they like games like The Binding of Isaac or Dark Souls, then make them some dungeon crawls with cool boss encounters and lots of magic items to find. And if they like puzzle games and are rolling a transmutation wizard, give them some interesting out-of-combat problems to mess around with. At the end of the day, if you really aren't sure, it's hard to go wrong with killing monsters and getting treasure. Have them do that for a bit and see what they try to do outside of it. Maybe you include some extra areas and they get totally explored, and now you know your characters like to explore. Or you add some interesting social encounters and some of your players decide to talk to them for about 2 hours. There's a bit more that I could say on this subject, but I think this should be enough to get you started thinking about your players and what you can do for them. If you guys have any questions, you can post them to me in the comments. I'd be happy to help you figure out your players, what they like, and what you can do for them specifically in your setting. Thank you very much for watching, and Godspeed.